Welcome to Season 2 of Veterans AZ, the show that celebrates veterans across the great state of Arizona and highlights their stories and accomplishments. To kick off our second season, we are very proud to be part of continuing the legacy of the USS Arizona. We do that through an interview with Nikki Stratton, granddaughter of Donald Stratton, a USS Arizona survivor of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Nikki shares her grandfather's story as part of her personal commitment to honoring him and his shipmates, but she is doing even more than that. Hear about it coming up. I'm here today with Nikki Stratton, whose grandfather, Donald Stratton, was a seaman first class aboard the USS Arizona, December 7th, 1941. So he found himself literally on the front lines of history. Well, thank you for being with us today, Nikki.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about your grandfather? What kind of man was he?
He was just a genuine man. I mean, he would walk down the street and you would have no idea that he was a Pearl Harbor survivor, let alone a USS Arizona survivor. He was very jovial. He had a great sense of humor, and I think that probably is what people remembered about him as he got older. Through everything, through the fire, through the injuries, through going back to World War II after he was injured, he still managed to keep his sense of humor, and he had it until the day he died.
Now, you were obviously able to spend time with him and really have that such an important relationship I think we have with our grandparents. So that's great. When did you first really start to understand his legacy as a surviving crew member of the Arizona?
Well, I've been told stories ever since I was very young, but I don't think they really hit home until I was in 4th grade, and we were actually learning about Pearl Harbor in my history class. We were learning about Pearl Harbor, and I just raised my hand and I said, "Hey, my grandpa was on the Arizona," and my teacher's face it was like a jaw-dropping moment, and at first I felt like I may have said something wrong just because of his reaction, but then he pulled me aside after class and was like, "I need to know more, give me more information," and so I told him the story as best as I could as a 4th grader, but his reaction really is what kind of gelded me towards, learning more about the Arizona and knowing that my grandfather was not just an ordinary man. He was somebody that had a story to tell, and a very important story, a very historical story. And so I started to read anything I could get my hands on. I would talk to my grandfather, which was both good and bad. Sometimes he didn't want to talk about it, and sometimes he did. A lot of times I would kind of eavesdrop on other conversations to try to glean as much information as I could, because being a young kid, it was something that really wasn't talked about, the dirty details and the hard part about the death and the burns and everything. So sometimes I just kind of had to listen through an air vent or something like that.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your grandfather's story on the Arizona? You mentioned he was very badly burned, I believe.
So my grandfather was on the portside director when the big bomb hit. At that point, they were attempting to fire at the Japanese high-altitude bombers, but unfortunately their shells were bursting before they were actually getting to their targets, and then the big bomb happened. And so that was over 1 million pounds of ammunition, of aviation fuel that just kind of went up, and it tore the ship almost completely in half. It elevated about 75 feet in the water and then settled back down into Pearl Harbor. My grandfather and 6 others were trapped in the director. One of them actually was burned so badly and actually endured a gunshot wound to the head from a strafer, so there was 5 left in the director, including my grandpa. They actually had no way off. They were cooking alive. The temperature was about the temperature of lava coming out of the Kilauea volcano, so about 2,000 degrees. And you're just surrounded by metal. And then the dress code of the day was shorts and a t-shirt. So anything that wasn't covered was just immediately burned. I think when they finally did his medical evaluation, he was burned about 65-70% of his body. 3rd degree burns, so we're not talking little, baby burns. But ultimately, they got the attention of a man named Joe George, who we found out later. We had no idea what his name was until after the 50th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. I think it was the 60th that we found out. But Joe George, who was on the Vestal, he was actually putting out fires and doing his duty, and which was amazing because he actually was going to receive a summary court-martial that day for getting in a bar fight the night before. It's just a fantastic story. They let him out early, and had they not let him out early, my grandfather and I would never be here. So Joe threw a line from the USS Vestal all the way over to the USS Arizona, which was about 100 feet. They tied another line, and then my grandfather and the 6 others climbed hand over hand across burning water, strafing Japanese planes onto the USS Vestal. So my grandfather was burned over 70% of his body, like I said, and he actually arrived stateside on Christmas Day in 1941 and recovered in Corona, California for about a year when he finally said he had enough. He was done after the doctors said that, hey, you need your arm amputated, and he absolutely refused. He said, what is that going to leave me? So he was like, I'm done with treatments, I'm going to go home. And so he ended up hitchhiking back to Nebraska, where he spent another year home with his family, but realized that he wasn't done yet. He wanted to go back, and he wanted to get back into the fight. He wanted to avenge his shipmates, the 1,177 that passed away that day, and also his best friend, Harl Nelson, that he never saw again. So he decided he was going to re-enlist in the Navy. The Navy had a few issues with that. They said, we don't think that you can make it. He said, I think I can. So they said that he had to go through boot camp a second time in order to get back on a ship. And so he went through boot camp a second time and, did great with that. They said, hey, why don't you stay back here and, train boots and, teach the sailors, everything that you've learned. And he's like, put me on a ship. And so within a week after graduating boot camp, he was on the USS Stack and bound for the Pacific Ocean. So he participated in, I believe it was 5 more battles in World War II. So he effectively started and finished World War II.
Wow, that is an incredible story and certainly an incredible man. Let's fast forward to today, and you are the ship sponsor of the new USS Arizona, a fast attack submarine that will be commissioned soon. When were you first approached with that idea, and what was that like?
Well, I gotta say, me being asked to be sponsor, it happened on the worst day of my life, which is very interesting to say. My grandfather had just passed away. He passed away in February of 2020, and we actually had a big funeral for him, and this happened just right before COVID, so we were still able to have a group gathering. And the Secretary of the Navy actually spoke at my grandfather's funeral. It was Secretary Thomas Maudley at the time. And then he pulled me aside afterwards and he said, I know you know this, but I named 2 ships, USS Arizona and USS Oklahoma, as the 2 new fast attack submarines. And he's like, for the Arizona, he's like, I cannot imagine anyone better serving as sponsor than someone that actually has a connection to the previous Arizona, and someone like your grandfather, to have his legacy aboard. And so on the worst day of my life, on the day of my grandfather's funeral, the Secretary of the Navy pulled me aside and asked me to sponsor the new submarine. And, of course I said yes, because I can't imagine a better legacy for me, for my family, and for the 1177 that passed away on December 7th.
So what does that entail? What is it like being a ship's sponsor?
We're still in the very early stages of being a ship sponsor, so I haven't really gotten to do much of the big events yet, but that is coming. So the first big event will be the keel laying, and so I will actually get to etch my initials in the keel of the USS Arizona. I'm actually going to go a step further and add a piece of the original USS Arizona onto that keel, because I think it's very important that we connect the past and the present ships together. And then I will actually christen the ship as well. I don't know if many people know this, but the original Arizona was actually christened with 2 bottles. The first was water that flowed over the Hoover Dam. And so that was used as the first bottle because Arizona was also a dry state at the time in 1916. And then they used the traditional champagne. And so for me, I'm like, ooh, precedent, that's awesome. I don't have to, start something new. I'm actually going to be doing root beer for the first bottle, and that's actually going to be a bottle that is created in Gilbert, Arizona, by Joe's Barbecue, which is a local guy, and he's been around for a long time. And the reason I chose root beer is because a lot of the survivors, that was pretty much all that they could drink for a while while they were recovering, because they were pumped so full of medications. The root beer actually settled their stomach, and they actually continued to drink it until their very, very, very late days, including my grandfather. I think he had a root beer the day that he died as well. So, root beer is going to be a good thing. And then we'll do the traditional champagne as well. So I will knock both bottles over the Arizona. And then there's the big one, commissioning. Commissioning is where the sub is actually presented to the U.S. Navy. I will essentially call it to life and then have the crew board the ship. And so that's kind of the big milestones at the beginning, but I will also be involved with the ship and its crew throughout its entire life cycle. I'll make sure that the crew is taken care of if they need, when they come home, have dinners for them. If they're in port somewhere, try to meet them there and, ensure that, if there's something that they need to make their job easier, I'm going to get that for them.
So what would you like our viewers and listeners to know about the process to get the new USS Arizona into commission? Is there something we, the people of Arizona, can do to support all that?
Well, we are going to be doing some fundraising. Obviously, we're going to make sure that all of these events go off with huge fanfare and all of that. So once we're ready, we're definitely going to start soliciting donations for the entirety of Arizona, as well as the entire U.S. We really truly feel that while it is named USS Arizona, this actually has a bit more history towards it with the entire U.S. And so we're going to make sure that, we accomplish that. We're also, any person can help. We're going to, come up with some crowdfunding so that even if you want to say, I'm going to donate $1 towards the keeling or commissioning or whatever, we're going to be able to accept that. And we want everyone to be involved. So it's truly going to be a statewide event, even though the host city is Gilbert. This is a state name ship, and so the entire state is going to be involved.
Oh, that's outstanding, and we'll certainly share all that information with our viewers and listeners. And I'm not sure how many people know the battleship Arizona. I believe the people of Arizona had to raise quite a bit of money to have that vessel built.
Yes, I think it was about $16 million at that time, which is 1913, 1914, 1915. When it was commissioned the first time. So it was commissioned in 1916, which is cool. But yeah, the state actually did have to raise quite a bit of it.
Well, hopefully you won't have to raise $60 million, but it would be great if our viewers and everyone in Arizona, and as you say, across the nation, can support this effort, because the USS Arizona does hold a very special place in United States history. Well, thank you so much. Before we close, can we talk a little bit more about the town of Gilbert's involvement? Because they're the sponsoring city.
Correct.
And so what is their role and what's your connection there?
Well, every United States vessel, they have a host city, and so basically that is kind of the center of activity. Now, the reason I chose Gilbert is because my grandfather was from a very small town in Nebraska, Red Cloud, Nebraska, and I wanted to kind of continue that and keep that same feel. And a lot of the USS Arizona sailors that were aboard in 1941 were from small towns. And so I kind of wanted to keep that, feeling through, and Gilbert is, a perfect place. It still has that small town feel, but, I think it's going to, prove to be a very good center of kind of activity and all that kind of stuff once we start getting going.
Is there a timeline? Do we know kind of roughly when the ship will be, when the keel will be laid and when the other pieces?
We do have a rough timeline. The keel laying will likely be late 2022, early 2023. Christening will be 2024, and commissioning will be around 2025. Hopefully in Pearl Harbor.
That would certainly be appropriate, and those years will come quickly, and that'll be such an exciting thing for you to be a part of. So congratulations and thank you so much for what you're doing to honor your grandfather and to honor all of the members of the USS Arizona, her crew, and our state of Arizona. It certainly has a special place in our hearts. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
The USS Arizona is such an ever-present part of our state's identity. Learn how you can do your part to support that legacy and the new USS Arizona at ussazlegacy.org. Did you know that entrance fees as well as standard amenity recreation fees at national parks and forests are waived for current military service members and their dependents, and for veterans and Gold Star families? This benefit provides the military community with free access to approximately 2,000 public locations spread out across more than 400 million acres of public lands, which host activities to fit any lifestyle from serene to high octane, including hiking, fishing, paddling, biking, hunting, stargazing, camping, and much more. Learn how you could take advantage of this benefit at blogs.va.gov, search National Parks. Thank you for watching or listening to Veterans AZ. If you enjoyed it, share it with friends and family. You can find past episodes and other veterans resources and information at veteransaz.org.